Welcome to the second day of the Ghana CEO Summit, brought to you by the CEOs Network Ghana in partnership with Deloitte. I am, by the grace of God, Jerry Ajololo, and it gives me great joy to welcome you, our very cherished CEOs. Please give yourselves a round of applause. Now, we as business people recognize that a loss anywhere is a loss everywhere. To this end, shall we please rise as we commiserate with the good people of Manchester and the UK as to their loss they suffered yesternight. And so we summon grace, we summon strength, and we summon comfort for the good people of Manchester, and we pray that the lives of those departed shall find rest. Shall we please take our seats? And on that very somber note, I come again with good news, because yesterday we had a full house of CEOs and great business leaders who put pressure to bear. And ladies and gentlemen, the good news is the base rates had reduced to 22.5%. How about a round of applause? Oh, isn't that good for lending? It's a feather in the cap. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's worth celebrating. But this morning, we gather here to consolidate on the gains of yesterday. Yesterday was an amazing session. We had the opening, and we were blessed to have the senior minister come share his thoughts with us on the economy. And ladies and gentlemen, were you edified? Oh, come on, tell me something. Were you edified yesterday? But today, we continue with one more item from yesterday, talking about digital innovation. That will kickstart today's discussions. Today, we will dwell on many very important themes. We will talk about growth, inclusion, and women's empowerment. We'll talk about major events that have impacted the world and strategy. How do we align the board and management during corporate transformation? But ladies and gentlemen, what is most important also is the SDGs, and we'll be dwelling on that richly. We would also be taking some presentations on business impact of the Trump phenomenon, Brexit, China's economy on the Ghana's private sector. You don't want to miss that for anything at all. But ladies and gentlemen, like I promised yesterday, today would be straight cutting to the chase, and by 2 o'clock, we should be through with all our deliberations so that we can come back refreshed for the gala. Is that a deal? Okay, so if that's a deal, may I just spell a few house rules? As always, I would entreat all of us to place our phones on silent. We have a free Wi-Fi connectivity made possible by Tigo, so you may wish to catch up with whatever is happening at work. If you need to use any of the restrooms, you may please use the exits at the back. Our ushers will be glad to assist you. We have coffee break intermittently, but if you feel the need to get some coffee to warm your system, please visit any of the stands outside. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our first presentation for the morning. I give to you presenting on a case study on the use of digital innovation to transform business, the Commercial Director of Nielsen, Ghana and Nigeria. Please say hello to Mr. Ato Micah. And Mr. Micah has 15 minutes to wow us.
Okay. Thanks, Jerry. Yes, I think I'll do that. Good morning, everyone. Fellow business leaders, ministers, all protocols observed. Can I have the presentation on, please? So, for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to share a journey that we're on in Nielsen and how we've done on a digital co-creation with a range of customers around their route to market and around promotions. So if you think of Okay, so if we think of, please, can I have the presentation on? Okay, thank you. So it's essentially a story that started in the second half of 2014. As you may all know, the economy was quite challenging, and we at Nielsen started thinking of where are we going to find growth, how are we going to grow our business, and we definitely had to pivot from what we traditionally do, which is performance management. So this journey started off with thinking about really, how can we be relevant to our clients? And how can we really make a huge impact in terms of the business issues that they face? And two things kept coming up. One was the fact that in Ghana, we operate in a very complex retail environment where it's highly fragmented. And if you look at essentially the retail chain, there are lots of touch points, which obviously adds costs and which obviously adds complexity to it. So how can we reduce that complexity and pass on the savings to our clients? The second one is around the fact that if you think of it, a lot of money is spent on promoting products, either through TV, roadshow promotions, etc. But there was no clear sense of what is the ROI to these activities, right? So we came up with a good proposition, and I'm going to take you through how we went about this and the impact that we're seeing on the client side. So starting off with the logistics inefficiencies. Next slide. We took a look at 24 FMCG categories. So when I talk FMCG, I'm talking fruit juices, I'm talking laundry powders, bar soaps, etc. The quantum of that is, the quantum sales value of that is about 6.1 billion Ghana cedis. And a very conservative look in terms of what the complexity within the supply chain system presented an opportunity of around 600 to 1 billion Ghana cedis, if you think about it. So 10 to 15% were just add-on costs just by transferring going from a distributor to a wholesaler, from a wholesaler to a semi-wholesaler, from a semi-wholesaler to the small shop in the neighborhood, and then the tabletop will pick it up. So the challenge then was, how do we help our clients be more efficient in this supply chain? How can we help our clients be more efficient in the supply chain, and at least recoup some of these be more efficient in driving that? We approached quite a number of clients with this proposition that this is what we see, this is the potential savings, and we're fortunate enough that three clients actually signed on to this. So what did we do? We then embarked on a very crazy ambition to literally go out and map all retail and business outlets across Ghana. Over a period of 9 months, we hired close to 400 people across the country, a budget of over $1 million. We then profiled every store. So when I say profile every store, we know the name, we have selling, what products they stock, how much their throughput is, what amenities are available, if they have POS, if they don't have POS, if they have fridge, if they have access to electricity, profiled all of that. And put it on a map-based platform. So we have it based on Google Maps. This then became the basis for us to engage clients on how to optimize their route to market process. This started the next step of the journey. And one of the things that we saw was that from all these outlets, 56% of them sold your regular fast-moving consumer goods. Around 51% also handled beverage products. So it kind of gives you a fair sense of the level of penetration that we have. And liquor was around 17% out of the 280,000 outlets all across Ghana. Next. No. So with this tool and with this platform, how have we engaged and actually made an impact in the clients we've worked with? The first one I'll talk about is we've worked with a client to optimize a 4 million euro spend in terms of optimizing their distribution footprint. So how did we go about this? We worked with them. They had a budget. They knew the target in terms of how the distribution footprint across of the key areas. So if you talk about the southern key cities, start with them, develop their route to market, which priority stores they need to handle directly, which priority outlets they need to get a third party to do that, what type of trucks, given how much would be sold through at these stores, so that by the time they move from their factory every morning out, they have the right amount of product, they have the right route map that optimizes fuel, they have the right path that makes sure that the routes are the most optimized, given traffic, given all the other challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis. We're now working with a tomato paste manufacturer on actually directly reaching chop bars, right? So if you think of the level of engagement, typically you would have the chop bar, the manufacturer going through a wholesaler going through a semi-wholesaler, and so on and so forth, which obviously adds more cost to it. And now this manufacturer is really aiming and addressing directly the chop bar channel, which is a key component for them if you think of the sales for that. We're also now working with a telco partner in terms of developing their SME strategy. So if you think of small industries, if you think of small and medium industries, if you think of the mechanics, the various outlets all across, and the ability to right-size the market, the ability to directly have a strategy that is grounded on data and a component that helps you to execute. That is the power of this retail outlet census that we've done. 280,000, 9 months, 1 year. And this is just a little bit of a snapshot of the tool and what we did in terms of assisting this particular client in the €4 million investment in optimizing their distribution capital expenditure in that sense. So this then led to, well, we've done this. We now have all our outlets mapped out. We now are working with clients to effectively drive the savings across in terms of their route to market distribution. Another challenge came up, well, if you think of it, there's no direct, or if you think of it this way, there's no direct way of measuring how promotion effectiveness, or have some insight around that. And this came about with a simple question. I'm spending all this money on doing floats. What can you guys do? What can Nielsen do? We then figured, well, let's give it a shot and see. So we came up with another idea, a concept. We looked at overall how much is spent, a very good sense, right? So if you look at how much is spent on TV advertising, you get a percentage of that, what amount of that goes into these promotional activities, and what the size of the opportunity would be. We then embarked on a very crazy idea to really understand what incentives actually get the Ghanaian consumer or the Ghanaian shopper to actually go out there and buy something or change behavior. So we embarked on a outreach or a study around targeting 500,000 households over 6 months in Accra, Kumasi, Takoradi, where we gave different incentives. So some we gave some with a coupon, some we gave just free products, some we gave a host of other items to basically see if they would, how effective that would be in driving their repurchase behavior and by how much. Quite surprisingly, and this we did across different socioeconomics, there's a scale, right? So we had the East Legon side, we had Accra Newtown, we had different socioeconomic classes represented in different of the offerings that we did. And the results were outstanding. The results were outstanding. One of the key things I would say, I mean, part of it is also proprietary, but one of the key things that comes up is we have a system where if we offered coupons and there was a real convenient way for shoppers to actually redeem those coupons, it had a much higher incentive for consumers to actually try. The other thing was established products. So if your product is a well-known brand name, giving more incentives really doesn't change consumer behavior. I've been told 4 minutes, so we'll be wrapping up. New products actually made it, giving those incentives for new product actually was a game changer for these products. So we then moved on to then see, well, how can we put all this and layer this in a digital way to really make it real time and get clients to really see the ROI on these investments that they're making. And this is just a snapshot of what you've seen, of what we displayed to clients. So what's next? And I think this is something that we're quite ambitious about and quite excited about. And the idea that we're now working with and now pitching is, how do we layer this together? So now we have the footprint of all outlets in Ghana, and we have over 500,000 households in Accra, Kumasi, Takoradi, which accounts for, depending on whose numbers you're looking at, 60 to 80% of economic activity contribution. How do we layer this onto these two platforms? That makes it more convenient that a PZ can send a message to someone in East Legon that they should go to the shop next, the popular shop that they typically patronize, and they have X and Y coupon around it. If you think of the possibilities, location-based targeting, if you think of how giving more relevant offers to the person based off of the socioeconomic profile and their past purchasing behavior, the possibilities are endless. And this is what we're now looking to do. Overall, these two things that we've done, these two major things, looking at the retail census, looking at the household outreach and testing this promotion awareness, there are two things that we've learned through this process, both from engaging clients and actually rolling the service out, is there's a huge need as industry players to collaborate a lot to serve it, to basically build capacity, right? Because I'll use an example of the route to market. Some of the clients that we approached initially definitely bought into the idea. They didn't have the talent, they didn't have the structure to do that. But we went on a journey with them, we brought in our own internal resources, helped them build the capacity internally, and staff up to execute this project. So that was one of the big things that we've seen. It doesn't necessarily matter that you need to have the expertise in-house at the right time, or we need to know the end goal. But at least the fact that you can think about it and visualize it and give you the opportunity to engage in that sense. And the impact is almost immediate. If you think of I'll use this as an example. There's a manufacturer here that plays in the cleaning category. They spent a lot of money going through wholesalers and really not seeing a lot of change in their sales. Through the analysis on this database, we're able to isolate, just in Accra, the outlets that account for 80% of laundry powder sales. They started engaging them directly. Their volumes in Accra alone has made a seismic shift in that sense. And I think the more we think of digital and the impact to our business, let's not think of the investment, but let's think of the fact that the input cost gets to zero. And I think the CEO of Vodafone yesterday mentioned it. If you think of all the planning that goes into it, if you think of the incremental cost that applies to it, digital gives you the efficiency. And I think these two case studies and what we've done with some of our partner companies in here would serve us as food for thought. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Atumaika, Commercial Director, Nielsen, Ghana and Nigeria. Thank you very much. A round of applause for him. And so this is how we make a good case for hey, if you haven't had breakfast, don't try it. Digitization, yes, bringing efficiency. But ladies and gentlemen, we know that in the world of disruption, what separates great companies from average companies is research and innovation. Management exists principally to what? Return on investment, to create return on investment for shareholders. But leadership exists to map out a new direction for the company. And that's why we gather here as great business leaders. There's often a clash of ideas between the board and management. And that's why you need to align the board and management during corporate transformation. Who better to speak to us on this than a man who knows a thing or two, giving his wide experience in corporate Ghana and the world at large. Ladies and gentlemen, an academic, a researcher, a man of God, he's all things to all men. I must warn you, he's very dangerous. Ladies and gentlemen, he's a leadership consultant and former rector of GIMPA, yours truly, Professor Stephen Ade.
Well, the good news is I've been told that I have 20 minutes because on the timetable I had 11 minutes. And I was wondering whether, so I did my thing in two parts. One slide introduction, and then if they give me more, I'll do 11 slides. But it's a pleasure to be here. And please, from your list, I am teaching at Pentecost University. Please, this month, somebody will pay me, and it's Ashasi University College. So let me correct it before my boss decides not to pay me. I've been asked to talk about aligning the board and management during corporate transitions or transformations. The only slide I'll be spending more time, and I've put a lot of words on, is the one that follows, the introduction. Because to give my point so that when my 20 minutes is up, at least you know what I wanted to say. First of all, not every improvement in an organization is transformational. And that is what must be. Every good manager does some sort of changes. 10%, 5%, the type of things you are used to around the corporate table, budget time, and the rest. And also, I must say, so-called strategic plans are just mere projections from where they are without any strategy in it. In transformations, we are talking about radical changes, even when it has to do with performance, quantum changes in the performance level. But most importantly, it has to do with the way people do things, behavior, or corporate culture. Because if you don't change your corporate culture, then you are not getting transformation. So when it is performance improvement, we are talking about, for example, They still call me former rector of Gimpa. I've left that place, retired 8 years ago. But I know the reason is that for 9 years, we improved turnover by 50% every year continuously, so that the output, the turnover, rose from $500,000 to $15 million in 9 years, and the only public sector institution in Ghana which is not under subvention. So this is what we mean by the transformation that so I want us to make sure that, and such transformations tend to be characterized by a lot of speed, and this is my own quaint word so that the English-speaking people, if you don't understand certain uncertainties, you know that I'm speaking Shire English. That is English from my village of Shiremwasi. When you are going through transformations, especially the leadership should be certain where they are going, their vision and other things. But boy, no matter what you do, the day-to-day, there are so many uncertainties, and the ability to rise up to the occasion is what makes me call it certain where we are going, and uncertainties of the many detours and how you go out and come in, it tends to, and cultural change and quick actions. Major transformations always, whether in big or small organizations, tend to be disruptive, risky, costly in the short term. And one of the biggest, especially if you are in business, is the fact that people expect these days a very quick return. And much of the problems many corporations, especially in the West, are facing is the appetite of the shareholders and the investors for quick return. So when you are going through a very disruptive but eventually sustainable and profitable transformations, you are in trouble because they are expecting to, when is the money coming? I've been promoting investment in mutual funds, and in the years 2008 and 2009, a lot of the people I advise comes to me and says, oh, my money is falling. They expect every year because they cannot wait for 3 years. And it's very difficult, especially in our circumstances, to ask people to follow the simple dictum. When the stock market crash, buy more. Because that's where the shares are cheaper. Buy when it's down and then sell when it's high. But then, eventually, of course, transformations will lead to improvement in the bottom line. However, and we may move on to the next introduction. However, no matter how successful a company is today, if you don't undertake strategic transformation, you will eventually fail. And it may not fail probably while you are alive, but it will fail on your children's watch. I always use Panam. When we were young, Panam flew directly is the only one, and I liked its blue colors. Panam will fly all the way from New York, Robertsville, Accra, and Lagos, and with their long jets. The only thing that is remaining about Panam is the Panam building in Manhattan. They couldn't believe that Panam will die, or BOAC, British Overseas Airways Corporation, first time of going to Britain in 1971. It was a pride of the villager going on a BOAC. People think that British Airways is BOAC. No, it's a completely different corporation. What I'm using this to show how no matter, in fact, the more of a leadership you are, and the likelihood is it that you will fail to do serious transformations and you will crash, especially in these days and age with competition, new modes of doing things cheaper, faster. So you cannot. In corporate transformation, therefore, you need the leadership And when we talk about corporate leadership, we are talking about the board and the CEO combined, understanding their complementary roles and willingness to put in a strategic framework, a transformational agenda, having a much more comprehensive, we'll come back to that, corporate specific scoreboard. Because if you are doing transformation and you focus only, as you are pressurized to do, only on the financial scoreboard, the bottom line, which is important, but in transformations, the bottom line should be there. But the human resources, your customers, and other, you have a wider scoreboard which you should be looking at. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, what are the critical roles of the board and CEOs? I must say that irrespective of what you call them, because sometimes the public sectors forget that, they are still having boards and CEOs and they must perform the functions. The CEO and the board constitute the linchpin of leadership, and the institutions fall and rise with them. Where they compromise on their fiduciary and other responsibilities, you can be sure that there will be institutional failure. But when they show competence, ethical dealings ethics in their dealings, put in place effective system and manage risks effectively, they are bound to succeed. I wouldn't have time to talk about these things, but as I go on, you see the next slide talks about 3 leadership unforgettables. This is just a throw-in for you to think about it, so that about one of the things I always say, that leadership is cause. That's when it comes, and especially when it comes to transformation, everything else is effect. Serious transformations are never bottom up. Eventually, even if the idea comes from below, unless the leadership embrace it, you will never achieve serious transformation. In the same way, my colleague in corporate governance, Bob Garrett, the reverse is also true. The fish always rots from the head. And since we don't have time to go through corporate failures, I want to say that in all these things, integrity here, both moral integrity, but faithfulness to agreed principles, it's always important in terms of when you are undertaking transformations, because there must be trust. So when you are in turbulence, there must be trust. Many of you travel quite a lot, and when there's turbulence, your only thing is that you believe that the pilot knows what he's doing. Except when you are flying over Cameroon in certain periods. One day I was flying over Cameroon, and the pilot had to drop the plane by several thousand feet at once. Apparently it was going to hit very bad, and I could see everybody became religious in the plane. And then later on he explained that really there was such a storm, he had to, in this case, drop so that he would go under it rather than above it. But when you are going through corporate transformations, if there is a sort of disquiet between the chief executive and the CEO, there's a lot of trouble. And the only way to deal with it is being transparent and showing integrity. Slightly soiled, greatly reduced. Let me now go to the relative roles of the CEO and the board in the next slide. I keep on saying the next slide because they are controlling from there. They didn't give us one of these modern ones. Could you move on to the next slide? Yep. There's no clear cut, but when you come to managing corporations, and especially in terms of transformation, to be clear the areas of responsibilities of both the board and management. Of course, in most cases, the CEO is part of the board. And when it comes to the vision, mission, and other things, doing strategies, he will and his team will initiate it. But at the end of the day, the ownership of the vision, mission, core values belong to the board, including the chief executive too. So, and then, of course, both of them have to own the strategies. But when it comes to the detailed goals and action plans, the budget and operations, there must be a trust in the CEO and his team to be in charge. And let me tell you that some of you here are both CEOs and also board members. If you don't trust the competence and the integrity of your chief executive, you must fire the person. Because if it's a matter of second guessing, you are in trouble, and everybody below. And there's a need for that type of trust between both the CEOs and their their boards. And that is where the board must also take their responsibilities seriously. Because oftentimes, the CEO has much more information. A good CEO is as smart. He may not be being involved. He's not as independent in his thinking. That's why he needs a board to reflect upon. But the CEOs tend to have a lot more, and what they bring to the board is what the board works on. But if the board itself is not prepared, and oftentimes in transitions, very fast transformations, many of the boards just go along rather than performing their basic responsibilities of making sure, and the next slide, that things are being done legitimately so that we don't have the WorldCom and Enron. And in Ghana, I'm sure many scandalous ones are going to appear, because in the past 8 days, if you have been following our news items, including boards and chief executives sharing $4 million and other things, it is the board's responsibility to make sure that what they are doing is ethical and legitimate. But especially in our part of the world, my concern has to do with the competence of the boards. It is a responsibility of the board as a group and as individuals to be competent for what they have accepted to do in discharging their functions. You are not supposed to do all the detail, but you must be capable, especially in transitions, with a clear scoreboard as to agreed vision, agreed objectives and goals, risk management framework, so that you can ask the right questions and interrogate them. And if you don't have that competence and it becomes a coffee-drinking board, then of course I mentioned the trust and the ethics. Let me move into the end. I have about only 3 more because of the 20 minutes. Foundations of effective board-CEO relationship and alignment during, actually normally, except that in transitions, it becomes much more urgent. In other words, these things are not to be done only when we are in transitions, but because of the speed, uncertainties in transitions and transformations, then these things assume greater dimensions. So let's go to the foundations of effective board-CEO relationship. First, there must be a clear understanding between the two concerning their relative roles, authorities, and functions, and what they are called to do. And in order to do so, there must be a strategic framework in which both sign on a transformational agenda with signposts so that you can measure them, and broad enough company-specific scoreboards, indicators, and risk management systems which allows monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. I serve on about 10 boards in Ghana, all of them private. Most of them, about half of them I chair. And we never spend more than 2 hours at board meetings. And the reason is not that, we don't want to take things serious. We agree on what we want to do. So I always tell the chief executives, please, if you can't do your job, tell me and then I fire you. Because it's not, no. So we agree on that. And oftentimes, people in serving on boards and the chief executives don't sit down to really agree. What I hate most is about 500-page strategic plan. No. The strategic plan cannot be reduced to 10 pages. It is not strategic. In other words, you are talking about how your wife goes to market and your husband, whether he eats well. That's not it's not strategic. The strategic issue, you are telling me in 5 years, you are going to take the company from A to B. These are the objectives, and this is the roadmap, and these are the indicators. And of course, for me, as to which are the risk factors, because that's what in our language we say that when you are making a path, a CEO, you may not know whether your path is straight. So the board's responsibility is to stand there to see whether it's straight or not. And I want us to agree on that. In fact, when I finish here, I'm going to a management meeting, and we are going to spend only about 1 hour, because when I go, he says, what are they? We go through the scoreboard, and it's finished. And it's so important that you agree on that. It makes life easy for both the chief executive and the board, and you can have more time for coffee. And of course, make sure that it is not only the quantities, finances, but also the ethical standards, the framework of accountability, integrity, and transparency. Especially these days, the issue of integrity in corporate governance has become so important, and you should take it. And of course, you must be willing to confront culture. And that is where, in cultural change, in other words, how we do business, behavioral change, often the chief executive needs the support of the board, because people don't want their comfort zone to be disturbed. And oftentimes, they will come to the board and tell all lies about the chief executive. But there's a limit to which the board should interfere in the chief executive's day-to-day operations. Let's jump over the next one and go to the last one. Let me summarize by saying there are simple, ordinary tools, but when you are going through transformation, it's so important that we take them seriously. And I'm just summarizing what I've said so far. The tools for effective alignment of board and management during corporate transformations. The first is, and listen, President Bush says that, watch my lips. My words here have been specially chosen. It says, management-initiated, board-interrogated, and approved long-term vision and strategy. It's very, very important. That is the starting point. Management-initiated, board-interrogated, and approved long-term vision and strategy, backed by a roadmap and operational principles. That is, then you can align, because you are now singing from the same hymn book. Of course, they didn't ask. This also must be aligned with creating value for shareholders, because the alignment of CEO and board is only intermediate to create shareholder value. I am more a development economist, but more towards the liberal side, and Friedman is my hero. And he says that the first corporate responsibility is what? Anybody knows? First corporate social responsibility is to make profit. I mean, if you don't make profit, I mean, this idea of, when you go and help a school somewhere else with just one classroom, then we all call it corporate social responsibility. That's not it. If you didn't make profit anyway, can you do it? So he says the first corporate social responsibility, increasing shareholder value. Everything else follows from there. Second, as I said, as a summary, is a clear scoreboard. What are we going to measure? And the measurement is in terms of not only financial, but turnover of senior management, the basic client base, the customers, is it growing or shrinking? You must have a broader scoreboard and what you measure. And related to that is risk management. I mean, if you have a sanguine like me, as your CEO, I know that my CEOs were always in trouble because I was doing something even as UN Res Rep in Namibia. God spared my advice, my director, Ellen Johnson, said if someone said, Stephen, what's happening? I said, just wait. For example, I decided that I will use all the resources on the poorest region of Hangwena in one term to transform it. And of course, the bureaucrats in the country were so angry because they used UNDP resources as a piggy bag, to go for overseas conferences. And I said, yet. But there's a certain limit. That's why you must agree on the risk management so that you don't cause the CEO doesn't cause undue trouble. And then management board meetings must be so, it's what I hate in the world, let me tell you here, it's my idiosyncrasy, is, matters arising boards. You meet this month, the next month, matters arising 90% of the time. That's rubbish. Matters arising should be listed by the CEO, the actions taken, why he couldn't do other things, why he exceeded. So that one is dealt with in 15 minutes so that you can focus on strategic issues, the scoreboard issues. And if you use matters arising, and you are not going to achieve serious transformation. And for that to happen, you must have a robust board charter that disciplines both the chairman and the CEO. I thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, Professor Stephen Ade, how about a resounding round of applause? Many great nuggets of wisdom shared there on aligning the board and management during great corporate transformation. But thank you for articulating well the foundation of effective board and CEO relationship and alignment. Wow, the first corporate social responsibility of any organization is to make profits. It sounds like Robert Mugabe though, but... And so, distinguished CEOs, the June edition of the Harvard Business Review is titled, What Great CEOs Do Differently. How many of us have seen it? Well, it tackles the behaviors that sets the best CEOs apart from other CEOs. In the middle, as a prelude to the full article, this is what it had to say. The Chief Executive Officer role is a tough one to fill. From 2000 to 2013, about a quarter of the CEO's departures in Fortune 500 were involuntary, according to the conference board. The fallout from these dismissals can be staggering. Forced turnover at the top costs shareholders an estimated $112 billion US. in lost market value annually. A 2014 PwC study of the world's 2,500 largest companies showed. Those figures are discouraging for directors who have the hard task of anointing CEOs, and daunting to any leader aspiring to the C-suite. Clearly, many otherwise capable leaders and boards are getting something wrong. The question is what? You should read that article because it factors one of these things that we're going to talk about, the major events that may impact your strategy. How would you know whether 2017 is going to be that year of disruptive innovation? Well, there is one man who can clearly tell us what 2017 and beyond has to say concerning your business strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the CEO, AB and David, a celebrated corporate lawyer, Mr. David Ofosu-Dorte.
Good morning. And before I go on, I just have to correct one aspect of the introduction. I'm not the CEO of AB and David. I'm the senior partner. I stopped being CEO way back in 2012. Yes, but I drove the organization from a small organization of starting with 2 people who didn't have money to buy a table. We borrowed it to an organization today which has branches in 4 African countries. We're opening our 5th in Zimbabwe in July, and we are able to advise through affiliates in 24 countries. So that's what transformation is and means to me. I also don't believe in stereotypes. And Professor Adai is my lecturer. He actually inspired me, made me understand strategy, and my entire idea about moving the company forward actually came from him. Except that I disagree with him on just one point, and that's how society is. We train people so that they can come up with new ideas. My organization doesn't exist for profit, strangely enough. In 2015, we declared ourselves a For Happiness Corporation. We exist for happiness because we believe that it's only when our clients and our staff are happy that we make profit. And we live by it. I'm not kidding you. We live by it. So yes, it's good to make profit and we chase profit. We don't make losses, but we strive to make everybody happy. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you about 10 things which I do believe will impact, and the number of things which will impact on you are many. You can't count them, but I'm going to give you my 10 picks. They don't come in any particular order. So they are not necessarily 1 to 10. But I'll talk to you about 2 things which you must do in order to make these 10 things impact on you. Number 1 is the new patriotic government taking office. It's a new direction. It changes the whole landscape from what it used to be. So what are the things that I pick out of that change? Industrial development, 1 district, 1 factory, business stimulus package, industrial subcontracting, Minister of Business. By the way, many people credit me with that recommendation for the Minister of Business, but I'll return to it shortly, why people credit me with that. But having said that, what does 1 district, 1 factory mean to the people here? How many people in this room have read the MPP manifesto? How many business leaders? I can see only 3 hands out of several people. How many have read the budget document? So how are you playing a role in 1 district, 1 factory if you've not read the document? Where do you know where the direction is? How do you know where the money is going? This is impacting on your business. If you've not read it, you don't know what the business stimulus package is about. One of the things I find in this country is that foreigners react to our policies more than we react to our policies. When the Millennium Challenge was going on, the Compact 2, I went to the ministry to ask somebody, what is this about? And he said, you are the first Ghanaian to come here. A lot more foreigners have come here, and no Ghanaian has come here. Why? Chief executives don't react to policy changes, and that is why many of us keep chasing politicians, because we think we will get favor from politicians, instead of reacting to the enabling environment politicians create. So that's my number 1. Let's get on to number 2. But before I go to number 2, I think I have a couple of questions to ask, because a lot of money have gone through the system. And let me put a few on the board. Compact 1 happened. Sankofa, 7.9 billion. Jubilee, 3.1 billion. 10, 4.9 billion. All these investments have come. I don't know if I can have by hands how many people have had any subcontract in any of these in this room. And I'm talking about, can I see by hands, if any? I'm talking about CEOs of Ghana. Pathetic, isn't it? Brexit. We'll be talking about Brexit in the afternoon, so I won't dwell very much on it, but it's going to impact on your business. But in my view, not as significant as we pay attention to. Long and short, we seem to pay more attention to Macron's wife than to the fact that Macron is going to let the European Union stay. Because if Le Pen had won, what it would have meant was that France was going to exit the EU, and there would have been no EU for Britain to exit from. But that didn't happen. So we are going to have an EU, and Ghana will have a dichotomy of having to negotiate direct bilaterals with UK, as well as having to deal with the European Union. And it's going to affect us, and it's going to affect your businesses. For example, soft power is going to happen. And what is soft power? Boris Johnson came to Ghana recently. He didn't come for fun. Because if UK exits the EU, it affects Britain. Britain's trade with Ghana has actually dropped to only 3%. That's what it is. So Britain itself is seeking to improve upon its trade with Ghana. I'll deal with America shortly. And that is why Boris Johnson will come to Ghana. And that is why you will find that UKTI, as an example, is gradually vanishing from Ghana because Britain recognizes and responds to the change and creates an organization, for example, called UKGCC. I'm sure most of you have heard about UK Ghana Chamber of Commerce, which seems to be replacing what UKTI used to do in this country. But our CEOs responding, there will be a drop in the size of the aid that we get from the EU because Britain's budget is going to go out. That's as simple as that. So you take, for example, that the road sector, which is heavily funded by EU, is going to receive less cash. Trade exports may be the ones which will benefit because the strength of EU in negotiating with countries with Britain's might. But if you take our exports to the EU, Britain has the largest part. So the strength of Britain, of the EU in negotiating with English-speaking or Anglophone countries is going to reduce. So that may benefit. Trump, controversial man. One word defines him, uncertainty. There is nothing certain. It's as simple as that. But the key things that I think is going to affect your business is the return of the diaspora. By the way, in July, there's going to be a diaspora fair in Accra. Yes, a lot of the diaspora may come back with know-how. How you respond to it is your business. You may tap that know-how, or you may be wiped out by that know-how. It's entirely as a result of your response. But the key thing is that the US, and the ambassador has said this, is also seeking, like Britain, to double its trade with Ghana. The trade has dropped to 1.2 billion. So US trade with Ghana is actually falling, not rising. AGOA, which was much touted in 2011, made $24 billion for Africa. 2016, it was $11 billion. US trade with Africa is actually going down. That's the data. China, which we will talk about, it has become the most significant entity throughout. And let me deal with Africa. I'm a Pan-African, so I like to talk about Africa before I bring it to Ghana. China's trade in 2011 was $9 billion. In 2016 with Africa, it was $239 billion. That's how much change has happened between 2000 and 2011. That's how much change has occurred in a decade. That's what we are talking about. They give $63 billion to Africa for FOCAC. Only Mali and Senegal have taken $2.3 billion for a railway project, and I will touch on that shortly. The ambassador announced recently that their trade with Ghana has increased to $6.6 billion. Now compare that to UK and compare that to US. Again, if your business strategy does not consider China, there's a problem with the strategy. How many have a China strategy here? Okay. China implements certain strategic events which are going to affect you by 2030. The most significant I want to talk about is what is called the Silk Road. China believes that during the Ming Dynasty, when they used to trade by walking through Dubai and walking all the way and connecting Europe, you need to establish it by rail. And it's so intensive that they actually are now doing videos for children to understand that China must dominate the world trade. And they are doing it in English. English is England's biggest export to the world, actually. Anyway, but the rail link is so significant, we are downplaying it. I'm sure some of you must have seen the video. I'll return to this rail link shortly. If you take the case of China, in anticipation of this 10 years or more ago, they started doing the rail link in Africa. So Kenya has a rail link which has now opened, which links, it will link eventually to the China Silk Road, and I'll explain what this means. The good thing is that this government has just published an advert to get an expression of interest. It came 2 days ago on the Accra to Paga Railway. I actually hope it happens. One of the things that Prof said, which I agree 100%, is actually the so-called matters arising boards. I've sat on both public and private boards, and there are too many matters arising. I hope this doesn't become a matter arising, that we will actually implement it. And that will affect you. My pick number 5 is the aluminium sector. Every government has talked about it. They give you different names. And Ghana is only with one of the only 7 countries in the whole world which have everything it takes, everything to do an integrated aluminium industry. And we haven't started. So how you react to it is what is important. Japan is my pick number 6, but I combine Japan and China and India because both of them are trying to outdo each other with $30 billion and $10 billion respectively. The areas they are likely to impact, if you are in these areas, are the cashew industry, machinery, pharmaceuticals, and the fact that a lot of things will happen after the AFDB meeting, which is ongoing today in India. Actually, I was supposed to be there. I'm a regular participant at the AGM. I chose to do this instead of that. Let's go to pick number 7. New financing sources. I still hear Ghanaians talk about lack of finance. In sectors like maybe law practice, it's very difficult to get finance because people like to finance rice production or rice import and sugar import. But many people you talk to complain about lack of finance are actually not looking at the fact that there are many new sources of finance. Indeed, there is more money looking for good projects than there are projects looking for money. That's a fact. Talk to any good private equity firm, they will tell you that. Islamic finance, private equity rounds going on, crowdsourcing, pension funds in Ghana. I worked with the committee that advised the Ghana Pension Regulatory Authority. It is possible to now use pension funds for a lot of long-term funding. And the fund managers know this. Businessmen must begin to demand products which will enable them access such long-term funding and forget the syndrome of one man owns everything. So you can bring in equity and get cheaper funding. If you take sectors like power, or if you take sectors like just agric, Feed Africa alone, the AFDB has $24 billion they want to spend. Again, if anybody is in this room who is tapping or is beginning to negotiate the possibility of tapping this, I'll be happy to know, just for the purposes of the record. But again, I can't see any hand up. Bank of Ghana policies. The MC just announced that the base rate has dropped to 22.2. The more Bank of Ghana drops the rate, the more likely you can borrow and do your business. At the current rate, you can't borrow to do your business. So you should be watching the Bank of Ghana space. What I expect business leaders to be talking about is having meetings where they send suggestions to the monetary policy committee before they meet. Not to read it after the fact and always blame government. I think we blame government too much. There's a lot of the blame which is ours, which we don't pursue. How many people actually talk to Bank of Ghana? I had occasion to have a meeting with a group of businessmen, with the governor, to ask, what exactly are you going to talk about next time? That was 2 years ago. And that was the first time I took the delegation there. I think Ghanaian businesses need to open their eyes. Number 9, trigger factors. There are several trigger factors that you need to look at. These will affect your business, and this will affect your strategy. Infrastructure is number 1. Urbanization by its very self. The growth of cities. Accra is predicted to be one of Africa's mega cities. The very nature of urbanization changes the paradigm. So between now and 2030, 2020, the sprawling nature of Accra will require product delivery as an example. The first speaker talked about how he successfully mapped 280, or is it 480 places, kiosks, and money to increase, delivery for one company to 400 million pounds. That's what he's talking about. That's the type of thing that urbanization does. Mobile phone sector, the youth, and I will touch on youth shortly. Value-added products in agric. Number 10 is technology, innovation, and millennials put together, which creates massive disruption. A lot of companies in this room are going to have their businesses very disrupted. And if you are not anticipating it, you ought to. It's a major event combined that will affect your business. A lot has been said about technology, and this whole conference about technology and innovation, so I won't touch too much on it. But if you look at these areas, I've talked about mobile, cloud computing, etc. Let me skip the slide because of the time. Innovation. This is where our biggest failure is. And I want to spend a couple of minutes on it. First, many people think Ghanaians are not innovative. I disagree. If you think so, I don't care being controversial. We are one of the most innovative people you can find anywhere in the world. That's very true. It's where we exercise our innovation. We exercise it much easier when we are outside Ghana. So Mensa, who went to Addis Ababa, creates the fiber optics. We've talked about it here. There are a lot of inventions attributed to Ghanaians and patents. But there are certain basic things we forget. Innovation is affected by culture. And any good strategist will tell you that culture transcends strategy. That's one of the reasons why we don't progress. No matter how hard you do your strategic plan, without correcting culture or amending culture of the organization, you aren't going nowhere, as they say. Culture transcends strategy. You may choose to disagree, but that's up to you. I address organizational culture. You have to. And as a collective, we have to. So we are innovative. Culture is one of them. The other one is we don't have the ability to let people contribute freely. A lot of our lecturers bully us throughout our life. We come into organization and the managing directors and the chief executives want to be worshipped. You carry their books when they come out, you open the doors for them. The chiefs wants us to call them Nana. The prophets wants us to kneel before them. So our concept of leadership and authority and power is about those who are above us. We are not allowed to create. That culture ought to be changed in an organization. Otherwise, the organizations will die, and I'll show you proof. We are very, very innovative. Because of our innovation in culture, we innovate in the wrong areas. How many human beings can you see in this? I want a suggestion. Yes, lady in red. How many human beings can you see there? Just give me an idea. You can count this. 3. Everybody sees 3. Okay. Some see 4, 3. Fine. Essentially, there are 3. The others are bled. But there are only 2. I'll tell you why. And I'll explain to you shortly. This man is a corpse. He's a corpse. He's dead. I'm not kidding you. That is Georgiata. Georgiata was a footballer. Brown Half United. He played for the Black Stars. He died. That's how he was laid in state. He stood in state. We are so creative that we can let cops stand in state. Because our culture is funeral-based. That's why we will go to funeral on holidays. In fact, that is why when every single chief dies, we go to the president to announce to him. I'll be happy the day that Nana Akufo-Addo president will ban chiefs coming to announce to him that somebody is dead. Isn't it in the newspaper? Do we have to make so much fuss about it? In fact, one day, the president of the National Union of Ghana Students died, and the president was informed. That's our culture. So we are very, very innovative. In fact, the funeral industry has innovated so much that it has actually reached full prime. Can you play this and let them hear? Okay. Not playing so fine, but you've seen these dancing cops and these dancing pallbearers. That's a very matured funeral industry. As soon as the limitation on mortuaries were lifted, you've seen the number of funeral homes we have in this country. It's $1 billion industry. What about the other industries? On the board, you can see Cocoa King. How come Cocoa King and Wachi Express are the only innovations around in this sector? In 2015, I gave a public lecture at the British Council. That's when I made a recommendation for the Minister for Business, and I pushed that idea. And I actually predicted that if Ghanaian business leaders don't innovate, one day, Wachi and Jollof will be sold at ShopRite. Apparently, it's happening already. And Wachi will cease to be a Ghanaian business, a Ghanaian food. That's a fact. Cuisine alone can sell a country. Before you heard of China, you were eating Chinese food. Cuisine is enough. If you want to be so innovative in this country, you can actually brand Kelewele. It's unique to Ghana. You can leave, shit up, good. Shito. And I talked about Shito. These are unique to Ghana. And if you want ideas on how to brand it and make it yourself a millionaire, talk to me. I know how to make people rich. So innovation is about reinventing, about implementing a new idea. And don't make it a matters arising thing and repeat over and over and over again. I don't do that. In fact, I was serving on a board which became a matters arising board. I walked off. I told them I wasn't coming here again. It doesn't make sense. Millennials are part of the disruption. Big. And we underrate them. They are impatient, but they are a lot. They are digital natives. Simply, they were born with digitization. A lot of us are digital immigrants. So a lot of us, our phones have received and sent. These people, these days, you give them even a hard picture and they want to expand it. That's how kids are. That's what has happened to them. Now, this group of people are going to affect the future of our business. And I'll give you just one basic example, which we are not thinking about. All this will lead to massive disruption of businesses. Massive. My apologies, I need to go back a couple of slides. Yeah. Okay. One major event which is going to disrupt businesses is something the AU has passed, or initial, called the Continental Free Trade Agreement. And I think our president was in Ethiopia to initial that.